So this whole thing, when this epidemic was out, the swine flu, what was one of the predominant things that was going on in people at that time? What was one of the most predominant things? Fear. Fear can make people do a lot of different things. And fear, in this case, what did it make people do? Well, first of all, people were all about trying to make sure that they were 100% or 110% ready for this thing. Okay? They wanted to make sure that their bodies were healthy, that they were strong. They were doing, like extra vitamin C, different vitamins, drinking their fluids, getting their rest, all for the sake of trying to protect themselves from the possibility of the flu. Okay? Not even getting the flu, but just the possibility of getting the flu. This is what people were all focused in on. Okay? Aside from just that, even the people that didn't get the flu, they started to feel better because they were resting, they were getting their fluids, they were getting their vitamins. They were doing all of these little quote-unquote preventative measures, and even though they didn't get the flu, they just felt stronger. Felt stronger. What else did these people do? Okay? Or just people in general, when they're trying to avoid like sickness and things like that. Well, the best way to not get sick is to avoid it. Okay? So avoid the environment or avoid the people that are sick. Okay? So people were not, people were avoiding like different school functions. People were avoiding, different family functions, different community affairs and things like that. All again for the sake of just trying to avoid getting sick. Now that's not always possible. Okay? Sometimes you have to engage and you have to get into an environment whether you like it or not. Okay? In that case, the people, they go ahead and go, but interaction. You can limit your interaction in these environments. So interaction here is minimized. So in this case, people are still going to these functions, these schooling functions, family functions and whatnot, but now they're not going to be shaking hands, hugging, kissing, all this other stuff. Okay? Again, for the sake of, to try to avoid getting sick. Now, let's take it to the next level. Sometimes interaction is just absolutely necessary, just depending on who you are, who you're interacting with, and what you do. And in that case, you interact with this person or these people or the situation or whatever it is, but then you see these people going and washing their hands. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Or using hand sanitizer that kills 99.9% of the germs. Okay, using the alcoholics, the sanitizers. Okay. So now you're thinking, okay, well this is really starting to sound like it's going overboard here and things like that. But no, these people don't want to get sick. Nobody does. You know how you feel when you're sick. Now here, let's take it to the next level. So now, this person has gone through all 4 stages and there's just no way around it. Starting getting some body aches, some night sweats, some fevers, some chills, or God forbid, someone starts getting headaches and may lead to a stroke with hypertension, or they start getting some chest pains with their cholesterol getting too high, or they're starting to get dizzy or lightheaded because their sugar levels are not right. Something or another is going wrong, and this is a sign now. You're at level 5, you have some slight symptoms. Where do you go? Where do you turn? To the ER, go see a physician, doctor, whatever. You know that something is going on at this point. That's when you turn around and you're saying, I have to go get some help now. I really need help now. And then you get labeled with one of the above, and you get treated. And you get treated appropriately. Now, the whole story that I've been telling about, or I've been talking about over here, is to just show the portrayal, or just to delineate how people act when there's some known sickness around. Critical word here. Known sickness. Something objective. Something that can be seen. Sometimes things are not that apparent. Okay? The flu and things like that, very apparent. Sometimes you don't necessarily notice the changes with blood pressure problems, heart problems, or sugar problems and things like that until it gets to a certain degree. But some of these things are just not as apparent. So when you see people so worried about physical sickness or the manifestations of this physical sickness, just a little while ago I was trying to figure out what the heck to talk about, and I just remembered that in everything that happens in life, there is a sign. And so in this sickness, I was just thinking, maybe because I can't think of what to talk about, maybe there's a sickness in me. Because if we're not able to constantly think or remember Allah, or to make something like this almost second nature to us, then that is a time where we need to turn and try to find that help. Because maybe there is truly some type of sickness that is brewing in us. How will we do that? Why shouldn't we worry about a spiritual flu or a spiritual sickness as we worry about these physical things, these physical sicknesses? So I talked about 5 different steps, or 5 different things that people try to do to avoid physical sickness. Now, to go on to the spiritual sickness. What is number 1? We talked about rest, fluids, vitamins, things like that. So what is the rest, fluids, and vitamins in translation for spiritual health? Well, you can translate that into any which way, but I have my own translations. Dhikr. Going to the masjid, or frequenting the masjid. Doing just different spiritual deeds to work on the heart, the mind, and the soul. To keep that heart and spirit strong. Number 2, avoiding environment where bad things can potentially happen. If you avoid the environment, most likely all you have left is just whatever's in your mind. So at least avoiding the situation is a huge step. So in regards to public affairs, don't go to places necessarily where there's drinking, smoking, gambling, all of these kind of things. Or privately, what are you doing with your eyes? TV, movies, internet, okay? Certain situations, maybe being alone with someone else. Whatever it is, these are things to just be cognizant of. Now, like we said above, sometimes you do have to be in a certain environment. So in this case, okay, you're in an environment. Okay, but the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a very resolute man. He did what he had to do and he went on. Because there was always something else to do after that. Always. Be in the environment for a time that is necessary. That's for everyone else to figure out what exactly is that time that's necessary. But in this one very specific example is limiting interaction with people that you're working with, other co-workers, just other people that you could very well have some issues with. People can get in trouble with these. This is a step. Number 3 is a very big step where people can rationalize that it's okay to hang out a little bit longer, or be somewhere a little bit longer, or talk with someone a little bit longer, or text a little bit longer, or chat a little bit longer, or whatever it is. This is something to be very, very cognizant of, because when you interact beyond what is the necessity of this work, you're opening the door for a third person, and that's shaitan. Number 4. So now you've gotten to the point of having to use your hand sanitizer. Okay? So I thought of hand sanitizer, so I thought of wudu. Okay? Wudu, istighfar, going to the masjid. If you've gotten to step 3, likely there's been some type of seed that has been planted. Some type of seed. that is going to take you into a direction that you likely will not go if you allow it to be watered and grow. A seed then becomes a weed. A weed then becomes a tree. And a tree then grows roots. And as those roots grow, it can become very difficult to uproot that tree unless something drastic happens. And that is something that we need to be cognizant of. That is something that we do need to try to avoid. The mind is a beautiful thing when channeled correctly. When the mind can always generate bad thoughts if the wrong seeds are being watered. Imagination itself is it's a fuel to the fire, but it could be the water to this bad seed. And that is something that we need to, again, realize and do something about. So, number 5, finding help. Well-respected brother or sister, a shaykh, an imam. Okay, because now you've already kind of failed the above treatment plan. So now you really need help before it's too late. And this is the equivalent to the doctor here, or the ER. If you're to the point of where this seed has already become a tree and implanted these deep roots, you may have some issues. Don't expect any magical treatments. When someone has already gotten to the point where their blood pressure is so bad, or their sugar is so bad, or their cholesterol is so bad, it is what it is. I will ask all of you, inshallah, to be very cognizant of what we have discussed, and to be very cognizant of your spiritual sicknesses or spiritual flu. Alhamdulillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. Those who purify themselves are the ones that are successful. This, my dear beloved brothers and sisters, is a very critical point. When these seeds that are being planted, these inappropriate seeds, that is a covering up in the heart, which is mentioned in Surah Al-Quran. That blackness, it starts with one. And if you don't do something about it, another one will come. And then another. And then another. Until spiritually, you cannot see anymore. And when you cannot see spiritually, you can't think, you can't hear, you can't feel, you can't walk, you can't talk to Allah. And that is a scary thing. That is a very scary thing. So if you're starting to feel some of these symptoms, I urge you to really think about it and turn and do something about it. And if you know someone else that is in that same predicament, another loved one, or another brother or sister that you know, then I urge you to try to go and help that person. Because God knows every one of us needs a little bit of help with this. And you don't know what it is sometimes that triggers. But there may be a trigger, and if you don't do something with that trigger and you don't take it to the next level, you will get stuck. You will get stuck where you are. All of these things about being sick is very sickening. It takes sabr. It takes sabr to be able to take it to the next level, to be able to come out of this. Now, sabr is not just something that's being patient, or it's just not an adequate term. It's not just being patient with something that has happened to you. But the concept of sabr in Islam involves doing what is right, struggling to do what is right, as well as avoiding the wrong. So 3 different levels of soul. The goal of the believer is something that's like ma'iyah. This feeling of basically feeling your Lord. That feeling of ihsan. That knowing that your Lord is watching you even when you know you can't see your Lord. Very simple example. We have little kids. We have these blessed little beings that roam around. And you tell them to do something, and they won't listen. And you're like, okay, fine. 5 minutes. Just give me 5 minutes and then you can do this thing. Do they listen? Alhamdulillah if they do, but I haven't experienced anything like that. So, can we all in our lives grow up and wait 5 minutes? 5 minutes for the hereafter. Because we all know that this dunya is a very short thing, a very short time. And if all we do is wait for 5 more minutes, inshallah, God will grant us Jannah. Alhamdulillah.